Madafri here, and welcome to another Monday morning musing webinar. I hope everyone is having an amazing Monday morning today, and let's get started. Thank you for joining. Anyone who has joined us, please, there will be a chat box in the corner of my screen when I share my PowerPoint. So please, if you have any questions or want to ask anything, just let me know. So let me get that PowerPoint presentation up. And the chat box is now up and ready for anyone who would like to, and I will begin the slideshow. So again, thank you so much for joining me for another Monday morning musing webinar. And today we're going to talk about the figures that all business owners should know. One of the things that has become very evident for me in my work with lots of different business owners is that there are some figures that all business owners do know, and we're going to touch on those right at the beginning because it's the sort of figures that we talk about with our, financial people, so our accountants and things like that. But there's some integral figures that a lot of business owners, when I ask them, they don't know, and they are so important that you actually know these, because this is how you gauge what is working and what doesn't work in your business. So let's get started. So the first one that, pretty much everybody does know and everyone is aware of is income. We all know income, it's all the money that comes into our business, basically all our sales that comes into our business that we make throughout 12 months is income. And that can be either cash, meaning someone pays you immediately, or what we call accrual, which is they book your services, but they're invoiced and they pay you over payment terms. So income is about all the money coming in. So we most business owners get this, that, this is what they need to keep their business afloat, of course, and they get the income part. The next part is what we call our gross income or our gross profit. And that is our income minus the direct costs of making that sale. This is where, and this is what we're going to go into quite a bit today, but this is where I find that most business owners sort of fall down. They have their income, they know all their expenses, but they don't actually know the cost of making a particular sale. And this is where it becomes really, really important and needs to be cut down even more. And then, of course, we've got our net profits, which is our gross profit minus all our expenses. Now, some people that don't know their gross profit figures might have just profit figures, which is income minus all expenses, and that creates our profits, okay? But let's have a look at some of the things that we need to know to really be able to gauge how our business is going. So the first one that I think is really, really important and people don't sort of tend to look at, and it's just so important so that you can ascertain what is working and what isn't working in your business, and that's your spend per leads. So how much does it cost you to get a lead? Now, for people who are using paid advertising, that's pretty simple and quite straightforward, because if you're using Facebook advertising or you use a newspaper, you ask people, how did you find me? You can gauge how many people have responded to that. But what happens here is that a lot of people don't have a look at all the behind the scenes that goes into actually getting that lead magnet up, and all the time in getting the lead magnet set up and your time to administer this lead magnet. So that's one of the first things you need to look at, because you need to have a look at not just dollars and cents, but you need to have a look at how much time has it cost me to create this lead magnet. And these are the sorts of things that you need to really have a look at and say, is it worth it? So, it's great to put ads in, local papers and things like that. A few years ago, I used to pop some ads in my local IGA where they had a community notice board, but you have to somehow measure whether people are responding to that, because if you don't know where your leads are coming from and how much time it's taking you, and yes, the cost if it's a paid ad to get that lead, how can you measure or know whether it's worth doing that again? So time is one thing. How much time does it take you to create your lead magnets? I often see people spending so much time and money on websites, but a website is great. Everybody needs a website, but if you don't draw traffic to that website, if you don't point people to the direction of the website, not many people know it's there. Okay. Events, how much does it actually cost you to run and put together an event in dollars, in time, and all those other things? This was an interesting one for me, when people were not even realizing where their leads were coming from. How much was it costing them to run an event? And these events could be webinars, could be live videos like what I'm doing now. What is it actually? What is the figure here? What is the actual, not only money, but the actual time, or the effort that has gone into making this event? And how is this event cost effective, not just in dollars and cents, but cost effective in time and all the effort that you put into it to get this lead? And of course, we're going to have a look at, you need to have figures after the event as well as the lead, because then the leads need to be followed up and nurtured as well. The next one is phone calls. How many phone calls you've had to put in? How much time to create this lead? So this is where I'm saying people don't stop and think about this, okay? And sometimes what's happening is, if you actually don't sit and figure out what your time, what your costs, and what your non-financial cost is behind doing something to get a lead, the problem is that you could be spending a lot of your time doing stuff that is not fruitful. A lot of your time doing stuff that is not generating you any income in the end. And this is what we want to eventually look towards. Okay. So yes, you do need to have a look at the dollars and cents, but you also need to have a look at all the time you're spending that is not, cannot be measured in dollars and cents, to see whether anything that you're running is worth doing, because it is creating a lead. So when I say spend per lead, it's not just money. It is all the time, all the effort, and you really need to know where your leads are coming from. A lot of clients that I start with, when I first start with them, they actually don't even know where their leads are coming from. So there's a couple of ways that you can actually figure out where your leads are coming from. Things like, let's say if they book a strategy call, or whatever you want to call it, a discovery call with you, that you ask, how did you find me? Or on the call, how did you find me? Or on a PM with a client, how did you find me? Okay. Also setting up your client records management system, your CRM, with the ability to be able to tag and put people in different lists to know where they're coming from, is really important, because this lets you know what works and what doesn't. And sales staff. Do you have any sales staff? What's it costing you for the sales staff to help you get this lead? Okay, so things that, these are some of the figures that you need to look at. I have run a couple of campaigns, and it's always test and measure, and things change, and, Facebook strategies change, and what people need on Facebook often changes as well. And I've run a couple of campaigns over the last couple of months, and it's interesting to see. I actually know what, now very clearly what my customers, what they're looking for. And I know that because I did a campaign where I did a freebie, and over 100 people signed up to that campaign to get my ebook. And then I noticed that on YouTube, I have a couple of particular videos around the same sort of subjects that have had the most views. So that now is me, how I test and measure and know exactly what my clientele wants. So how are you testing and measuring? This is what it's all about. It's not just about the cost, though that is important. And of course, remember that, and I know if you don't have a bookkeeper or you're not financially trained, please speak to your accountant, but the costs of getting leads, of creating that income should be an actual direct cost. So it should be in your gross profits, not in your net profits. And a lot of people don't actually realize this, because if you're spending money to get direct income and leads, it should be part of your gross profit, and your overheads like your electricity, your internet and things like that are more what your expenses are. And here's some other costs, and these are a little bit more easier because you're actually paying for these, a VA, and if you have a PA. I often have a look at how much it's cost me in VA and my PA fees to get a certain campaign up and running, and how did that campaign go? Did we get leads? Did we not? And then we have a look at what needs to be done. But you must know these sorts of figures. Just knowing your income and expenses really is not going to be enough, because if you don't know these specific figures, you could be working on stuff that is absolutely not giving you any leads or any income. Okay. The other thing you need to know is your spend per conversion. So the first one we looked at is your spend per lead. So people who actually, sign up to your groups, or sign up to your ebooks, to your PDFs, to your freebies, to your webinars, whatever you're giving away. The next one is, how much are you spending to convert into a conversion? In other words, to get a client. Okay. And this is really, really important to know, because if you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on leads and none of those leads are converting, something's not quite right. And this is where I often get clients coming in. They're spending lots and lots of money. They're getting lots of leads. Sometimes some of them don't even get leads, but they're getting lots of people getting traction on Facebook, getting traction on Instagram, but no one is converting and buying. So then we need to have a look at, what is it, number one, that's not making us convert. But you wouldn't know this is the problem unless you had your figures right, unless you know that this is what it takes to get a lead, and then this is the next step, and all of a sudden I can't convert. That's where your problem is. So you don't have problems getting leads, it's cost effective, it's not taking you heaps of time, but it's in the conversion area that you're not having any luck. So this is where we need to have a look at. So again, you need to have a look at things like, how many leads do you need to get a sale? This is a little bit of an outdated model here, but the rule is usually 1 in 10. So for every 10 people that you speak to, you get one sale, but that's a real low conversion. These days, different people have different conversion rates, and the figures can be a lot higher, but you need to know your conversion rate. You need to know how many leads do you need to get. So if you're, wanting one one-on-one client, let's say, and your conversion is 1 in 10 because you know your figures and you've worked it out, then you need to speak to 10 people or have touch points, get in front of 10 people who are hot leads to get that one conversion. Okay, and that goes for everything that you do, not just one-on-ones, for webinars and all things. And different events and different things you do will have different conversion rates, and it will also differ according to price. The lower the price, the more higher the conversion rate. The higher the price, the probability that your conversion rate is lower is more, because there's more risk when people spend more money. Yes, that's right. Yes. Absolutely right, Sharon. There is more risk, because people, the more money they have to fork out, okay, the more risk that, you know, they find it's a risk for them because they're having to fork out more money. But, you know, spending $30, $50 on a webinar isn't as much money for them to lose and invest in than if they're paying for a $5,000 program. Does that answer your question? Cool. All right, so you need to know, once you need to, you know, how many, you know, what it takes you to get a lead and whether your lead magnets are working and they're bringing in leads. The next thing is, what are you doing to convert them and what is your spend? And again, we need to look at, you know, how much does it cost you to get a conversion? And yes, in time again, because then you need to nurture them, phone calls that you need to make, in the nurturing of them, wherever that lead is, and also in money as well. Because if you've got a salesperson, how much is it costing you for that salesperson? How much is it costing your ad team to follow up? Or how much is it costing for you to put different people into your CRMs? All these sorts of things, you need to know it. And I know it sounds, you know, insignificant because it might just be, you know, a couple of dollars. But as your business grows, you need to know this, because if you start to have a business that is 6 to 7 figures, these expenses and overheads to get these needs and conversions actually grow exponentially, because that's what happens. It's not like, you know, what it costs you to get 10 leads and convert one person is going to be the same as what it costs you to get 1,000 leads and convert 100 people. So you've got to make sure that you start from the beginning, when you're really small, and start getting into the habit of doing this and then seeing how much it costs to convert leads along the way. So when you do have these figures, make the things you do in your business count. So in other words, know your numbers, really important. Continue with what works. Okay, so if you know something's working, you know that old saying, if it's not broke, why fix it? So if you know something's working, continue with what works. Tweak what sort of works. So if you're sort of getting some good traction, and then you're not converting, or maybe you just need to tweak, or maybe you're getting some good traction but you would like more, maybe you need to tweak that. But at the end of the day, stop what isn't working and focus on what is. And unless you know these figures, unless you know the time it's taking you to get your leads and get your conversions, you're not going to know what to tweak, what to continue, and what to stop. And it's really interesting because not very long ago, I had a conversation with a lady who is in retail, and she was running Facebook ads, and I said to her, are you converting, are you selling from Facebook? And she didn't even know, and she was spending thousands and thousands and thousands, because she has quite a big brand, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on Facebook ads, and she didn't even know if she was converting. Okay, so you must know your figures beyond what you think is important, which is income, profit, and net profit. Okay, so your conversion rate, each activity that you do, you must know your cost in dollars, the time spent, and that's from the, you know, from the minute that you start to create that lead magnet, whatever it is for you. Okay, from the minute you start. So whether it's a, you know, if it's an ebook, how long is it taking you to do the ebook, all the time to, you know, load it in, do you have a landing page, all those sorts of things, how much time. And then you need to know your conversion rate from every activity that you do. So, you know, I can tell you now that there has been some things, because we test and measure everything, and there has been some things that I've had no leads on, has, you know, like half a dozen leads at most. I've had things that have had hundreds of leads, and no conversion. And then I've had things that have had a couple of leads and they've all converted. So, you know, you just need to know your own market, because your market will be absolutely specific for you. So you need to know your conversion rate. So if I put out this ebook, how many people get into the ebook, and how many of those can I then nurture and convert into a lead? into a sale. Okay, so really important that you know your conversion rates and what works for you. For some people, ebooks work well. For other people, webinars work well. For other people, workshops work well. For other people, meetup works well. What works for you? Okay, really important for you to understand that. And then the other really important thing is that you need to plan your figures. This is one thing that people don't actually think about. You need to plan ahead. So if you're going to, have a campaign, people do, 100 million things at once, and then they don't know where their leads are coming from. But if you're going to run a campaign, and you need to run it for about 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it is, a push for an event, a freebie, a blog, whatever it is, you need to plan ahead, and you need to know that you're going to have to give yourself, at least 4 to 6 weeks. Free stuff isn't so bad, because people don't need to make so much of a commitment. But even then, you need to, if you're going to run a workshop or a webinar or anything like that, you must plan ahead with that, because you need to get your leads, work a few weeks in to get your leads into that webinar before you can then convert them. Because I often see people that just put up events and they have very, very low amount of leads or followers on social media to even put them into the event. So you need to plan ahead. Where are you going to advertise these events? How are you going to let people know? So make sure that you plan ahead, okay, for all your events. Make sure that you know what income you want for your year, okay? You need to have goals. You need to, just say, oh, as much as I want, or just letting it go crazy like that isn't going to get you there. You need to have specific goals. You need to know how many people you need to speak to, how many leads you need, how many people you need to nurture to convert, all those sorts of things. So those figures that we just talked about before will help you when you sit down and plan figures for what you want for your next year's 2021 year, okay? And once you do that, break it down into months and quarters. How much do you need to make this month? How much do you need to make this quarter? And it was really interesting because the other day I was thinking about this myself, and if someone just said something about, 100 people at $2,000 each is, so I can't even add up now, 200,000. So you know what I'm saying? So it can add up really quickly, but sometimes if we look at 200,000, we think, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. Okay, so break it down. And then remember, if you need to, whatever you need to make every month, what's your conversion rate? So how many people do you need to speak to? Now you need to get your leads the month before you want to convert them. Some people will convert straight away, but there is a very small percentage of people that are ready to buy straight away. Most people will need to be nurtured into buying, get to know you and see who you are. Sometimes people take a couple of years before they even buy from you, okay? Break it down per events or one-on-one clients. So again, okay, if you do events, how many people do you need at each of your events next year to be able to get that financial goal? How many one-on-one clients do you need to see? What is your conversion rate? How many people do you need to speak to before you get that one-on-one client? So you need to know this. So if your rate is 1 in 10, okay, you need to literally speak to 100 people, and usually what happens is, out of those 100 people, when we look at, running a funnel, what happens is out of 100 people that you speak, roughly 1 in 10 will become a lead, and 1 in those 10 will become a conversion. So you need to know these figures. Really important. And also how much it costs you to do that. Because if you're running events and it's not converting for you, you need to stop. And that's a couple of things that I did. Well, at the beginning of 2020, we had no choice. I mean, we couldn't see people face to face. but I had to completely pivot and restructure some of the things that I was doing. And I realized that for me and my clientele, because I do have quite a national and international clientele now, that for me, online is actually the better way to go. Okay, so plan to succeed. If you want to succeed, if you want to know where you're going, if you want to be able to plan out the business that you want, you need to know what you're doing at every step. And one of the ways to do it is you must know the nitty-gritty of all your figures. Okay? And how many leads do you need to get to your figures? This is the most important thing. How many leads do you need to get? Now, everyone that you speak to, when I speak to everyone on Facebook and everyone who's going to watch this webinar, is not necessarily going to be a lead. They might. So everyone that watches this, I need to know how many leads I actually get from my webinars, and then how many people I convert from these webinars. And I actually do know that already. Okay. So have a think about your figures, because it's really important. How many people do you need to speak to before you get your leads, and how many out of those leads, how many people will you convert? And without knowing these figures, you could be doing a lot of stuff that is wasting your time. Okay, that's it from me today. I finished a little bit early, which is great, because this is what I plan to do. Thank you so much for being here, for all the people that are on here participating today. Thank you for those that commented and asked questions. I do really appreciate you being here. So as I say every week, you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or YouTube. So please do, we've got lots of free resources there. I'd love to have you join us in our groups, which would be really, really good. We have the fabulous Business Women's Empowerment group on Facebook, and also the Entrepreneurs Leading with Intention group as well, where I share on most. Not a problem, Jody. I hope you found that really useful. And also on Facebook, there are some people watching on Facebook. If you do want to join us, please do. So if anyone would like to know any more about this, please ask. Again, thanks for all the guys that were on here watching. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another Monday morning musing webinar. Bye for now.